Hi guys, welcome to this video which is going to briefly talk to you about how to analyse a piece of artwork for your GCSE. So you will obviously at Tuxford Academy have been given or have access to our Key Stage 4 art handbook, and in that there are a few pages that will help you with analysing artwork. Obviously this is worth 25% of your grade looking at other artists and what they call demonstrating your critical understanding. So you could use a sheet that looks like this from your handbook, which kind of gives you a summary of different grouped questions to answer about a particular picture. There's also a page that looks like this, which is a little bit more succinct, might be easier to follow for some people. And some people like to do their artist analysis in kind of like a picture and a big chunk of writing. Other people like to present it in a bit of an artier way, with kind of their art copies and different pictures, etc, to show their like deeper understanding of the artist's style. Both ways are fine, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to go about this in a really quick and effective way if you are a little bit stuck for time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to doodle, and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to tell you how we might go about hitting all of those different sections of the critical analysis kind of guidance sheet whilst analysing a piece of art in really quick and effective way. Okay, so the first thing that you might do is get a picture of the artwork that you want to actually talk about. This one here is one of my favourites. This is Fighting Forms by Franz Marc, made in 1914. So it's important to actually acknowledge the picture that you're analysing. So it's make sure that you write down the title of the work, the year it was made, and the name of the artist as well. Okay, so we've got the picture in the middle, and we've got the title and when it was made. Then you want to give a little bit of an introduction. Okay, so this is really quick, a couple of sentences or a couple of bullet points, basically telling me what the work is. So for an introduction for this one, you might say, this is Franz Marc's Fighting Forms painting, made in 1914. It's an abstract piece of work with lots of colour and shapes. That'd be it. So in essence, you're basically telling us what is the work of. The next thing that we want to think about is the actual content. So you're going to go a little bit more detailed with this. I want you to describe the picture as if you're describing it to somebody who can't see or somebody who's never seen it before. So it's kind of like stating the obvious. Tell me what's actually in the picture. So you might say for Franz Marc's work, you might say this painting has two large shapes that look like they're swirling around. One shape is black and one shape is red, and around it are lots of other colours swirling and creating different patterns and overlapping. And that's enough. So if it's a portrait, you might say this is a picture of a certain person. This might be they're doing this in the picture. If it's a scene, you might describe the scene quite briefly, but just generally give us the content of what's actually in the picture, what's in it. Then we want to look at context. So this is where a bit of research might come in. Obviously with Franz Marc, this example, we know that 1914 was around the time of World War I, and that will have influenced people in many different ways. So you might do a bit of research into how that affected Franz Marc, say for example where he was at that time in the world, whether he was, you know, a part of the World War I efforts, or how it affected him. And then also in terms of context, so that's kind of like your social historical context, but also you can look at the artist's context in themselves. So it's important when you look at an artist, not just to look at that piece of artwork, but look at all of their artwork you can find and see how it compares to the other stuff that they've made before or after that. So you're kind of linking this piece of artwork and telling me if is it similar to his previous work, is it typical of his artwork, or is it quite an unusual piece for them, and show that you understand a bit of context about the artist basically. Top brownie points for doing that. So for Franz Marc, you might say that this is one of his more abstract pieces. He usually uses similar colours but depicts animals like horses and dogs in these two examples. You could also obviously link it to other similar artists or art movements that they're part of, but it shows your wider knowledge. So the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to get even more detailed. We're going to look at something called the formal elements. So this tends to come under the headings of line, tone, colour, texture, form or shape, space, and pattern. So you might not talk about all of these things at once. There might be some that are more prevalent to the piece of artwork that you're looking at. So for this one, I'm particularly focusing on colour, I'm focusing on the forms or the shapes, and I'm focusing on the space, how he's used the space on the canvas. Okay, so for my formal elements that I might talk about this one, I might talk about the specific colours, I might talk about how the forms or the shapes are swirling and knotted and kind of fighting against each other, as the title suggests, and how it absolutely fills the space on the canvas. There are no empty spaces, there's chaos everywhere. Okay, so on to the next stage. This is the process part. So this is where you need a little bit of research to understand what the artist's actually done to create it. So I know that Franz Marc used a painting on a canvas to create this piece of work, but it might be a sculpture, it might be a piece of print, it might be an installation, it might be a drawing, they might have used paints in a particular way. What is their process? How have they actually physically created those effects? And this is when you need to emulate the artwork to really understand this. So by copying a piece of artwork, not only are you kind of figuring out how they created that effect, you're mastering their techniques, but you're also starting to look really, really, really carefully at the picture to be able to emulate it. So this is where your artist copy, as we tend to call it, comes in, testing out their effects to understand and analyse the picture. And then when you want to go in even deeper analysis, this is where the top marks come from, you want to comment on the composition. So the composition is basically a posh arty word for how stuff's arranged. So how are all those formal elements arranged on the piece or in the space? So you want to talk about where your eyes land first, so which parts initially catch your eye. And then how the shapes, the line, the colour, the texture, the form, the patterns, whatever, guide your eye around the space. So artists are very sneaky in the way that they use their formal elements to make you look at their artwork for as long as possible, because that means you're probably more likely to buy it. So think about the order that you notice things in. A quick and effective way to do this is to take one of their pictures and actually draw on the top like I have here. So I've simply drawn arrows and lines and marks where the most prominent shapes and patterns are to show how my eye is guided around the page, or around the canvas even, using all of these different elements in the composition techniques. So you can see how my focus or my attention is swirling around and fighting and really kind of looking at these two conflicting or fighting shapes or forms. So that's a really quick way to do it. You can do it on tracing paper and stick it over the picture. It's quite nice, or acetate, or you can just get a second picture and draw over the top. Okay, so the last thing we want to talk about is something called visual language, and this is where the real top marks come from. This is where you talk about the hidden message, the hidden meaning behind a piece of artwork. And there is no wrong answer because this is your interpretation. It's the lovely thing about art, there's no right and wrong, as long as you can justify it, you're great. Okay, so what is the message behind the work? What is the meaning? What do you get from it? Okay, everybody brings their own context to an image. So what do you actually get from that picture? What do you think they're trying to say? With more modern artists, you might even have the amazing opportunity to message them on Instagram or through the other means and ask them these questions. But if they're no longer around, like Franz Marc, you have to kind of guess and justify your meanings. So I might talk about how the title of the work suggests that it's fighting forms, it feels like conflicting feelings or conflicting ideas, and probably links to what's going on in the world at the time. There's also some kind of darkness and brightness as well, conflicting against each other, which could kind of symbolize lots of different things. So you can kind of say whatever you like, really, as long as you can justify it. But that visual language is where you really get those top marks, because you're starting to think about the meaning behind work or the message behind the work. You're talking about mood and you're talking about feeling. And there we are. So if you can set out your page with a picture in the middle and all these like notes around it, you don't actually need to worry about writing a full essay. You'll still get the same amount of marks because you're still kind of saying the same things. It's just in a different format. So how could you actually present this stuff? So you could do that and leave it at that if that's fine with you, but some artists or some art students like to go one step further and combine their emulated piece of art or their artist copy in with it. So here are some lovely examples of how you might do that and go one step further to demonstrate your understanding of the artist's style or demonstrate your critical understanding. Okay, so you can see here there's some lovely examples. Here's one of Vasily Kandinsky, and not only have they got all of their key kind of analysis written out very neatly and clearly and easy to read. If your handwriting's not perfect, use a computer to type it up and print it. They've also, if you can see, they've highlighted key phrases as well to help pick those out for anybody who needs to skim read it. They've included kind of small studies of the artist's work in there, pictures of the artist's work, and different kind of painting techniques that they've tried out. This one's one of H.R. Geiger, so you can see here that they've really shown understanding of the artist's style by almost kind of like incorporating their written work into the artist's copy, which I think is pretty cool. So it's showing how they've used biro to kind of recreate the same effects, but also putting in all of their written work into the picture as well. Again, they've got the name of the artist on there, very important. They've got pictures of the artist's work, they've got notes, and they've got copies of the artist's work too. This one is one about Carl Beasley. So in a similar way, you've got a nice clear title, you've got clear notes written out, you've got pictures of the artist's work, you've got studies or copies of the artist's work as well, and you've even started to get a bit of work in the style of too. But really clean, really clear, nice balance between the visual elements and the written elements as well. So that's a really nice example of an art sketchbook. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell, how to analyse a piece of artwork and get 25% of your GCSE art grades. If you ever have any questions though, or you're not sure, just ask your art teacher. Have fun.